Hey, it's Chuck. We are not bemoaning the noon kickoff. We are now owning it. It's a badge of honor. We're the lunatic fringe that defines our coach's legacy when it comes to this game. They don't get to define that outside the family. We're cut from a different cloth for Ohioans. He's got it all, man. He's even got the jaw. You know the jaw. You see that jaw, and you're just like, yeah, man, that's a dude. Do I want Michigan to beat Oklahoma? No way in hell. I don't know what world I'm living in. This is insane to me. And if you saw my outburst, I apologize. It's showtime now. And welcome into Buckeye Huddle Primetime. It is, in fact, showtime in the midst of the national championship game, which we are watching down here. If you want to talk about it in the comments section, let it fly, because we are certainly kind of doing a bit of a live watch while we're talking here, as the national championship is, in fact, being played today, despite college football's really, really poor planning here, making the transfer portal and all the action that the transfer portal was leading into this thing, kind of taking away from the actual college football playoff, as so many programs had so much happening in the transfer portal that I think it took away from a lot of the buzz of the playoff. I think that not only that, but taking more than 7 days between rounds takes away a ton of energy from the playoff. But the Buckeyes, now with a most likely near complete portal class, there is one more lineman that we know is visiting. I kind of wanted to go over that portal class tonight, but who you pulling for in the national championship game? I know that the majority of Buckeye fans polling for the Hoosiers, a fellow member of the Big Ten Conference. My personal opinion is that just means they're my closer enemy, but they are playing notorious villain Miami, who is my third most hated program of all time. So I'm definitely also rooting for Indiana, just not with the same vigor that a lot of people are. You know, when we talk about Indiana, this is a program that has a coach who is, really damn good with a lot of support, and they are a menace to us now. They're a problem. So them winning a national championship doesn't really do us any good as Buckeye fans, other than a little bit of extra bragging rights towards the SEC, which, while fun, doesn't really help us on the football field. These guys are getting better. They're going to continue to get better. They just re-signed their offensive and defensive coordinator to long extensions. And, it's just another problem we got to deal with in an ever increasingly better Big Ten. It's just a really good conference now at the top. We got a ton of dudes to deal with, and we got to play them next year. We got to go to their house next year. That said, we should have beat them. We should have beat them. And watching, I feel like we could have beat both these teams. It just makes me more sour seeing these guys out here playing, feeling that Ohio State could have beat both these teams. But, when it comes to these teams, they are pretty similar, but so different. You talk about Mario Cristobal, Kurt Signetti, like these guys are really similar. The way they run the program, they're both just very gruff, old school guys, focus on running the ball, and the way just their overall attitude on how to get things done, the culture of their programs, I feel they're really similar. Of course, these teams, well, Cristobal, as much of a disciplinarian he is, Miami has a ton of penalties, and as I'm watching this and saying this, they just got another penalty just right now. If they want to win this game as more than a touchdown underdog, they cannot have these penalties tonight. Absolutely can't have it, as we have now seen a series from each team on offense that neither went anywhere. Both defense looked really stout. But what I really respect about Mario Cristobal is he was coaching at Oregon, at USC, Sean. USC is my number 2. Obviously, number 1, you know who it is, then USC, then Miami. But when we go to Mario Cristobal, was at Oregon. Now, think of Oregon like 4 years ago and Miami 4 years ago. Mario Cristobal left Oregon to go back to his alma mater, Miami, which I respect the hell out of. I love when guys go back to their alma mater, because at the time, despite the history, at that time, Oregon, I felt, was a better job than Miami. And he went back to Miami to coach his alma mater. And basically, Miami and everything we think of when we think of Miami, like, he's the exact opposite. the team is not anything like the old Miami teams that we think of. It's a team that, they're not hard to root for, right? Like the old Miami guys. I don't know. Some people are drawn to that kind of style. I don't like it at all. I'm an Ohio kid. That's just not my style. But this Miami team does represent the epitome of the pay for play era. You know what I mean? It is a pay for play team. It is a team that is the exact opposite of the way Indiana's built. Mostly developmental guys and grizzled vets. Kind of the blueprint Ohio State has decided to follow in their most recent portal class, which we will go over tonight. Miami didn't spend a ton of money on skill position players outside a quarterback, but they spent a ton of money and put a premium on big men. They loaded up with 5-star and top 100 interior guys. Alex Maribel coached him up on the offensive line, Jason Taylor on the defensive line, and now they're in various stages of development. They go deep. They're dominant. We saw it firsthand. Didn't spend much on skill guys outside of quarterback. When we look at, obviously, Malachi Toney, he's a dude, but Malachi Toney, that wasn't a big-time recruit. That wasn't a guy who they spent a ton of money to bring in, and they really haven't brought in Mark Fletcher as a running back. It's a top 10 running back. He's not, he wasn't number one, all everything. And it's just like, they don't got anybody that's coming. Jordan Lyle was a pretty good, another top 10 running back, but they haven't broke the bank on skill guys outside of quarterback, wide receiver or running back, neither of them. And it's just a team that's built kind of the way you like to see a team built. Just trenches first, we'll make do outside of that. And then they get a transfer portal quarterback every year, which is kind of unique to them. I assume they would want one for more than 2 years, but we saw what they did last year. We saw what they with Cam Ward this year with Carson Beck. Now they're going to do Darian Mensah again, and they got themselves in a crunch this time. They wanted to get one of the big dogs in the transfer portal at quarterback. They got left out of a couple negotiations. They missed out on a couple. And now they're going to be forced to pay Darian Mensah a ridiculous amount of money, much more than he's worth, because that's the position they put themselves in, which is the massive downside to doing things like this. But there is a big upside. There is a big upside when we look at the quarterbacks that are winning national championships these days. It is the Will Howard types. It's not the Julian Sayin types who are starting in their first year. And we saw the rough time Julian had in the bigger games, and we looked across the field at a guy like Carson Beck, who I don't think is as good as Julian Sayin, but looked cool as a cucumber. Look at Will Howard last year, looked cool as a cucumber. As the stakes got up, the temperature dropped for him, and it went up for Julian. And we were having this conversation on the Buckeye Huddle board, which you guys should join us on the Buckeye Huddle board. You should subscribe to Buckeye Huddle YouTube channel. You should also like all the Buckeye Huddle videos, including this one. But on the Buckeye Huddle board, we were having this conversation, and one of the guys brought up, if you are going into a season with a quarterback who has never started like Julian Sayin in 2025, are you kind of resigning yourself to winning the national championship is not the ceiling for that team? Are you basically admitting we're not going to win the national championship, but the next year will be our shot? Do you think, now that we've seen all the evidence recently that these guys are all veteran quarterbacks that win a national championship, that that's the way you got to kind of look at it? Should we have thought Ohio State could have won a national championship with Julian Sayin this year? I think so, based on how dominant the defense was. But I think for the most part, that fella made a good point. I think he made a good point, because we just saw this transfer portal market, and my gosh, man, the amount of teams, top tier teams that are doing we're going to go get a free agent quarterback this year is just staggering. It's staggering. And, we saw Ohio State do it when forced to with Will Howard. I don't think it'll ever be the plan you set out for, but what if we start seeing a plan similar to now Luke Fahey this year, right? Luke Fahey is the quarterback they brought in 2026. What if you get a guy like Luke Fahey more often instead of basically an off year? So Luke Fahey was an in-between year, right? Between Tavian St. Clair and Brady Edmonds. who at the time when he committed was a top 10 quarterback in the class, has since fallen quite a bit. But at the time, it looked like, all right, you got Tavian St. Clair and Brady Edmonds. You don't want to stack another 5-star. You can't afford to. You'll lose one anyway in between them. So go get a guy with some big time upside, but he's got one knock on him, right? And for Fahey, it's his size. What if, and Ohio State's been lucky, they got really lucky with Tavian and Brady, that neither of these guys were demanding huge dollars. They weren't demanding huge deals. But you're only going to get lucky like that for so long. So instead of investing huge on the big time quarterback out of high school, now that we have seen in Julian Sain's class, 8 of the top 10 quarterbacks transfer. They're already on their second school. That's the class of 2024. 8 of the top 10 are on school number 2 already, which is insane. But when we look at this, what if you see them start to build more like, we're going to take shots on guys like Luke Fahey, and then if they don't pan out, then we go to the portal and get the starter. It's interesting, man. It's interesting because I never would have thought like this before. I certainly never would have thought like, I don't care as much about quarterback recruiting before, but I don't feel that I do anymore. I feel like I care about other spots much more than quarterback when it comes to recruiting now, because of the way the market is with quarterbacks now. If you're Ohio State, you're always in position to be able to get a good quarterback at this point in time in college football. It's just the way it is now. So quarterback recruiting doesn't feel the same as it used to. That's for sure. I know recruiting in general is not feeling the same as it used to for a lot of you. And that is based off of this most recent transfer portal cycle where we just saw 33 guys exit out. 8 of them, guys who just finished their freshman year. It makes it a whole lot less fun when you're following recruiting and you're saying, well, is this guy going to be here after this year? Are we ever even going to see him play? It makes it a lot less fun. Now, my hope is that in the off season, there will be a lot of people who are just bored and come off of that. And we still get to talk recruiting because it is so much, to me anyway, a fun part of the year is to have that carry us through the off season and through the summer in particular. It's just fun, man. It's fun. But I will say, like, as far as me covering it, like there used to be this deal where, you know, you would not say things or you weren't supposed to. It wasn't really kosher to say things like a guy on the roster you think might enter the portal. You wouldn't say that. That would just be kind of rude. Maybe a guy that Ohio State was bringing in a class, you wouldn't really say out loud, yeah, this guy's kind of a number, kind of a flyer, not really a guy they wanted too much, but you got to fill a spot. Like, to me, they have professionalized this so much now. They've made it so much a business. The players, it's very callous. It's very much business-like. The schools, it's very much business-like. The decisions that they're making, it's not based on the things it used to be based on anywhere near as much. So, like, for me, I'm just going to call it like I see it at this point moving forward. It's a very much professionalized sport at this point. When you lose 33 guys, it's just like, man. And, you know, I love what the Buckeyes did. I got to be honest here. I know there's a lot of people who look at this Ohio State transfer portal class and they don't love it. They feel like Ohio State went bargain bin hunting for a lot of these guys. I've heard that a lot. And I want to go through each of these guys and kind of talk about why I disagree. As we watch Indiana now moving the ball past the 50 on their second possession, and they got a little something cooking here. Indiana, man, these guys, I mean, the story alone, just that it's Indiana and who Indiana's always been. And for those of us who are Ohio State fans, we have watched Ohio State travel to Bloomington to take on Indiana. Oh, I'm watching the game. Oh, yeah, buddy. To take on Indiana and take over the stadium, 80% of the stadium all my life. And now these dudes are playing in the national championship the second year into their coach's regime there. It's just insane. It's an insane story. And I know that so many Ohio State fans have been really rooting for them all year. But I think I'd root more for this story if it was Kansas. to be honest with you. If it was Kansas making this turnaround, I think I would root harder for it than Indiana. And that's just because we got to deal with them now. We got to deal with them, and they're a legit threat. They've already beaten us. Since Kurt Cignetti's there, they're 1-1 against us. And we got them next year. They might be the defending national champion. That game might be, when Ohio State goes to Bloomington next year, that might be a game of the two most recent national champions. We played that game this year up in Ann Arbor. We might play it next year in Bloomington, which would be a pretty wild thing. And we'll know at the end of the night as I wear the 2024 national championship shirt for the last time as the defending national champion. And that sucks. But our man here, MC Drew, Miami Stadium is red. I have not seen the crowd shot. Oh, Mendoza takes a big shot. I haven't seen the crowd shot. Is it a ton? Is it a ton of Indiana fans? I figured it would be. Marco Lewis, wish the Bucks were here, but this game is boring. Both teams are garbage. I think it feels like salt in the wound here because I feel like Ohio State should have beaten both these teams. And I honestly feel like it was both games, the offensive game plan by Ohio State. If it were a little bit different, the Buckeyes would have won. The Buckeyes would have won both games and they would be here. And I feel like they are better than both these teams if they game plan properly. I really do. Jam wants wants Indiana to win 32-17. 32-17. If Indiana wins, I do want them to smash them. I do. I'm with you on that. I want to see a good game, but the whole thing with 2019 LSU, 2025 Indiana, that debate I think is flawed because a lot of people are saying this Indiana team, if you pitted them against 2019 LSU, they wouldn't stand a chance because of all the talent 2019 LSU has. But I think that is a flawed argument because that was a different era. It was a different era of college football. You got to look at how dominant was 2019 LSU in 2019 versus the rest of the pack. How dominant is Indiana this year versus the rest of the pack? LSU had 3 really tight games, Alabama, Auburn, and Texas that year. Indiana had Penn State, Ohio State, and Iowa. And LSU blew out Oklahoma and Clemson in their 2 postseason games. If Indiana blows out Alabama, Oregon, and Miami in their 3 postseason games, in addition to that, they beat Ohio State. They beat Oregon twice. Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama, Miami are 4 of the top 6 most talented teams in the country. That is unbelievably impressive. Even if Ohio State were to have done that, it would be unbelievably impressive. But to do it in a team constructed like Indiana is just amazing. It's as amazing as everything everything about this team is amazing. I talked to Indiana fans all off season. They were talking national championship. I was happy for them, but was arrogantly patting them on the head and saying, all right, let's be realistic, little fella. You know what I mean? And I'm the one with egg on my face now. I'm the one with egg on my face. It's just an unbelievable story. You know what pisses me off? Miami's DB, who is out for the first half of this game for a targeting call. Like, how are you going to do that in the national championship game? It just blows my mind, man. That rule, that penalty is just awful. It's just awful. As Indiana will line up for a field goal attempt. And the Buckeyes got themselves a field goal kicker in Connor Hawkins, the Hawkman. 3-0 Indiana. So let's go over a little. Oh, Mendoza's mouth is bleeding. Uh-oh. Oh, I see it. Ooh, I don't know. He didn't look too happy. He didn't look too happy at all. Looks like that's affecting him a little bit. So let's talk Buckeyes portal class. You know, the first 4 days of this thing, when this portal class started, it was a whole lot of panic, and understandably so. as we watch guys leaving that we are not used to seeing. And I had a talk, me and Tony Gerdeman, we had a talk about, why this one felt a whole lot different. It felt a whole lot different because we've not seen guys go to even the schools. When you look at some of the schools, right? We've not seen this. Aaron Scott at Oregon, Fahim Delane at LSU, Bryce West, Wisconsin, Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter, Notre Dame, James Peoples, Penn State. We've not seen guys go to schools of this caliber leaving Ohio State. It's always been a big drop down. Just a couple of guys throughout the transfer portal have we seen go to a school of equal caliber. Hero Canoe going to Texas. That was like the first time we saw that, other than JMO going to Alabama. It was the first time that we really saw somebody go to a peer school. Usually they're dropping down. And this time around, it was totally different. We saw guys that were in the plans in 2026, guys that could potentially start, and Bryce West and Aaron Scott and Fahim Delane, Jarquez Carter in the 2 deep, most likely. This is what we were thinking going into the year or going into the offseason. And the thought was, man, you're going to have a really young defense, but a lot of these guys you believe in. And this is no different than it's always been for us at Ohio State. And what happens? Well, that's why you recruit great. These guys step into the role and they usually blossom. You recruit well, get the right guys, develop them. They come in as juniors or sophomores and they're ready to go. A couple of growing pains, and by the end of the year, you got yourself a stud. That's how it usually goes. So was anybody really worried about it? I wasn't particularly worried about it. I didn't love Bryce West at nickel, but he's fine. He's fine. Aaron Scott wasn't starting. Fahim, I thought Fahim would be starting. I thought he'd be really good. I still do. Only now it'll be at LSU. But when we got all this news, it was a shocker. It was a shocker. And people were mad as hell. Man, people were mad as hell. And now that we've seen the whole thing play out, it is clear what Ohio State's strategy was. And I love it. I love the strategy. The truth is, you just cannot keep a roster of 87% blue chips, which is what they had last year, 87% blue chips, and pay them all market value. You cannot pay them all market value because there's always 1 or 2 dummies that's going to drive up that market for each one of those dudes. You just can't do it. So now it takes a bunch of guys that are willing to wait their turn, take a little less money. And that's what was going on at Ohio State. That's what was happening. And at some point, that was always going to, the dam was going to break because it broke everywhere else already. Ohio State was able to hold on to it a year and a half or 2 years or 3 years longer than other places, their competitors. And they did great doing that. But when it was clear that that was not going to be able to happen, they didn't stop, or they didn't kind of let it happen and then delve into the portal a little more. They just did, all right, now it's time. Total philosophy change. If you are coming in asking for more money, or we're bringing in a starter, or we're bringing in competition at your position out of the portal, and you're balking about it, like, we're just moving on. We're moving on, and we're going to get that veteran out of the portal. And they didn't just go get veterans out of the portal. I put these stats up the other day. They went and got 2 7-year guys. They got 3 5th-year guys. They got 5 4th-year guys. They got 1 3-year guy. That's the kicker. 2-year guy is the cornerback, who is he's basically like another. That's true. Happy Buckeye. That's true. They're the only one left. They're the only one left. But at the same time, they've got an advantage that a lot of people don't. Their in-state recruiting base is just different. It's just different. But you're right about that. They are the only one. And where was I? Oh, so not just guys that are old. They got a lot of old veterans whose production they can chart and they know what it is. They also got guys from big time schools. You know what I mean? They got 6 dudes from the SEC, 3 from the Big 10, 3 from the Big 12. The only small couple from the ACC. They got 2 guys from smaller conferences. They got Devin McEwen, the wide receiver from the University of Texas, San Antonio. That's the American Conference. That's the best group of 6 conference. Pretty good competition. And the guy went 40 receptions, 45 receptions, 60 receptions. So a 3-year producer, got better every year. And then they went to Ohio University, where they've got a lot of connections in Mason Williams, a guy who they checked out right down the street from me out of Mogador. Coming out of high school, they knew who he was. He camped, etc. So they knew who he was, went to Ohio University, grew up, got built up, and they bring him in, similar to Will Kazmarek out of Ohio University. Those are the only 2 guys out of the 16 they brought in that are from non-P4 schools. And the P4 schools, they collected talent from good schools, good quality football. It limits the risk. It limits the risky contracts. And I love it. I really love it. I think it's such a high floor portal class. And when we look at a couple of the mistakes that were made last year with Ethan Onyanwa coming out of Rice, and granted, Ohio State and everybody else thought that guy was going to be a dude, so I don't fault them for that or well, boy, they really screwed it up. I mean, they did screw it up, but everybody missed on that guy. It happens. Everybody missed on him. The fact that he couldn't even get in the 2 deep is unbelievable to me at his size. I saw that man in person. He's an absolute giant. I saw him run. He's athletic. I don't get it. I'll never understand it, but that dude couldn't play at Ohio State. I don't get it. But you also got a hit in Phil Daniels, who, despite having a rough end of the season, a couple rough games throughout the year, not a great pass blocker on an island at tackle. I think he will be a fantastic guard. I hope they move him to guard because he's a road grader when it comes to run blocking, not good in space. But he wasn't supposed to start last year, and he emerged as a starter. And a lot of people irritated with the offensive line. They didn't get anybody from the offensive line. That's probably the one big complaint that I've seen. As Mark asked, does anybody know if we still have Brandon Innes? Yes, Brandon Innes, still very much a member of the team. And we will go over the wide receiver room in just a minute here. But first, we're going to pull up the portal class and go through everybody that the Buckeyes did bring in. Starting with Earl Little Jr., out of Florida State, originally started at Alabama, from American heritage, Brandon Innes' teammate in high school. And he comes in as a safety, most likely will be in the nickel. So he's coming in replacing Lorenzo Styles. Hunter Welsing. We look at Hunter Welsing, and this guy, unbelievable with this ranking here. He is the number 3 tight end in the portal. Number 3. This guy is in his 7th year of college football. Last year was the first year he played. And that says 6'4", 220. I don't know if you can see the fine print. He's not 6'4", 220. He's now 255. That's an old listing. But this is a dude. This is a guy that not just rivals, but 247 also think is a total dude. And that's great news. Then you got James Smith. James Smith, 247's number 1 ranked defensive lineman in the portal. 5-star coming out of Carter High School in Alabama. And he's going to be the 3 tech. So it'll be him and Edric. Quay Rusaw, his teammate at Carver High School in Alabama, also a 5-star coming out of high school. And he is the number 2 overall edge, but he's kind of a hybrid guy. And we'll talk a little bit more about how I think Ohio State's going to use him. Terry Moore is a safety out of Duke, 5th-year guy who spent all last year recovering from an ACL. The year prior, he was one of the top 3 safeties in the country. Can he regain his health? Can he be what he was once before? If he does, that is a huge hit. If Terry Moore would have come out the year after if he'd have come out in the portal after 2024, the way he played, he would have been I mean, he'd have made so much money, it would have made your head spin. But because of the injury, Buckeyes get him at a bit of a deal, right? They really good contracts throughout the board. Dominic Kelly, this is the one single guy that they brought in who is someone who is coming in kind of like a recruit. He's kind of like your third member of the class of 2025 at cornerback, right? He's a corner, 2025, Georgia, spends 1 year there, plays in 5 games, and they really did not want to lose him. Ohio State gets him. Big, long, rangy corner. He was a top 200 kid. So that's the one single guy that's not a veteran expected to play this year. This is a guy who's a developmental guy. Not a developmental guy. He's a top tier prospect who will be developing to be an eventual starter, hopefully. Christian Allegro, linebacker, 6'4", 245 pounds, space eater. He fills a need that Ohio State lost with Sonny Styles, with Arvell Reese. He's very good at rushing. He's very good at taking on a guard. Just a big, tough, run-stuffing dude. Not very good in space, not very good at really a liability in pass coverage, but he adds something that you were missing because you don't have that big dude. And that is something that you didn't have. So you add that with Allegro. John Walker, you absolutely needed this guy, a 320-pounder who can eat up the double team at one tech because you were sitting there with Will Smith Jr., who is not that kind of guy. While Will played really good last year, you have got to have a bigger guy in there to eat up some of that. And John's going to do that for you. He did really good at UCF. This was a guy who Ohio State was in on coming out of high school, and now they end up getting him in the end. UCF's highest commit ever in the history of the school. Devin McEwen, the wide receiver we talked about out of UTSA. Jacoby Jackson, running back out of Florida. Ohio State was down to 2 running backs in the portal. After Nate Frazier went back to Georgia, it was B'Kai Frazier out of Michigan State, who just finished his 2nd year, or Jacoby Jackson, who is in year number 7. Give me year number 7. Give me that dude. A grown man. And to be honest, I think he's a better back. And on top of that, he offers what B'Kai doesn't, what Bo Jackson doesn't, what Isaiah West doesn't yet, as they're all young guys, none of them particularly great at pass blocking. Jacoby Jackson can pick up the blitz very, very well. One of the top-rated guys that were in the portal at that particular thing. Cam Calhoun. This is a kid from Cincinnati, Winton Woods High School, Jermaine Matthews' teammate, who went to Michigan, then transferred to Utah, had a great year at Utah, then decided to leave and go to Alabama, didn't play at all. Now he transfers to Ohio State. So school number 4 for Cam Calhoun, and he's got this year and the following year of eligibility left. We'll see if he sticks around for 2 years or not. But as of now, we'll enter the season with him most likely as your number 3 corner. We'll see how long he can hold on to that. It's interesting, man. It's just not the type of guy I would have ever thought would be on an Ohio State roster. A dude on school number 4 after 3 years, but we'll see what happens. Kyle Parker, love it. By the way, I wanted to share this with you. So Kyle Parker was Peyton Pierce's high school teammate at Lovejoy High School. And I asked Peyton about KP. He calls him K. He said, KP is probably one of the toughest, most competitive teammates I have ever had. And he's a perfect fit for the brotherhood. Can't wait to watch him ball out. So Peyton feels really good about him. Obviously, new wide receiver coach Cortez Hankton feels really good about him, or else he wouldn't have brought him up from LSU. And he's a guy who can play in the slot. He played 70% of his snaps from the slot last year, 30% out wide. So he can play either spot. He has considerably more juice than Brandon Inniss in the slot, and I think that's something a lot of people would like to see. Not quite as good of a blocker as Brandon Inniss, though I will say a lot of times we do this thing where if somebody's not good at one specific thing, we kind of overplay the thing that maybe they're kind of good at. That's Brandon Inniss when it comes to blocking. He is not a great blocker. He's a willing blocker. He's a get in there and grind it blocker, but he's not some phenomenal blocker. He's just not. But because he's not great at catching the balls, people that defend him say, well, he's a great blocker. He's not. He's a very willing blocker. He's a tough kid. But Kyle Parker, I think we're going to see him eat into quite a few of those snaps. One of the things that the LSU people said, and I played over at Chuck on Bucks, I played a podcast clip of one of the guys that covers LSU who was talking about Kyle Parker when he entered the portal, hoping that he would come back. He said that Kyle Parker was one of the only guys they had earlier in the year last year that could stretch the field. That's how he was characterizing the slot receiver. Now, we didn't have that last year. If you get a slot receiver that can stretch the field, you add a whole nother dimension to the passing game. Then you got Mason Williams out of Ohio, Justin Martin, backup quarterback, fifth-year backup quarterback. Hell yeah, we'll take that. Dalton Riggs, the long snapper, and then the Hawk, Connor Hawkins. Gotta love the Hawk, man. That is our new kicker, who is an absolute stud. So, fantastic stuff. As our buddy Happy Buckeye says, I don't know how accurate the transfer portal rankings are. They're very much inaccurate. And the reason they're very much inaccurate is because the transfer portal goes by so fast that it does not make economical sense for Rivals or 247 to put a bunch of money into re-ranking these guys. It just doesn't make sense. It only lasts 3 weeks. They don't get the bang for their buck. When they rank these guys out of high school, man, that draws out for 2-3 years. So it doesn't make sense to put a lot of investment into doing it. So they rely very heavily on their previous rankings when these guys were coming out of high school. And it's just not very accurate. And it's just kind of all over the place. I think they kind of pick off each other as well. For instance, Hunter Welsing, who was like really high at 247, was not at Rivals. Now they're kind of mirroring each other. And we see a lot of that. So all right, so that's who the Buckeyes bring in. Now, when we look at key losses to the NFL, key losses to the portal, key additions from the portal, key additions from recruiting, I think you're going to like what you see. I certainly do. We'll start with offense because it looks a lot different than defense. And starting with offense, when we look at key losses, NFL losses that really mattered, Carnell Tate, and then the biggest key losses in the portal, just because they're guys who were going to be vying for a starting spot, Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter, James Peoples is a backup running back. Tegra Shabola would have been a backup lineman. Those are your key losses on offense, which is, I mean, that's as good as it gets on a side of the ball. You know what I mean? Obviously, losing a first rounder sucks, but you can't really beat that. I mean, it's a fantastic amount of retention. We look at the key retention, and these are guys who, you know, potentially could have gone somewhere else. JJ, Julian, Austin Cerevel to the NFL. And obviously you're able to retain a bunch of other linemen and stuff, but there was never any doubt about any of these guys. It's just very important that you lock them down. You barely lost anybody. Key portal guys, Kyle Parker and Devin McEwen, your two wide receivers you bring in. Hunter Welsing and Mason Williams, your two tight ends you bring in. And I think that most likely your top two in that room going to be Hunter Welsing and Nate Roberts. And then your running back, Jacoby Jackson. Key recruiting pieces on the offense, guys that have an opportunity to play this year, potentially, in varying degrees of roles. Chris Henry Jr., who is the most obvious to play a lot of snaps. Jaquaden Guilford and Brock Boyd, potentially either one could see the field. Maybe Guilford a little more because Guilford physically is just really kind of yoked up recently. And he just won a bunch of alpha dogs at the Army Navy or the Navy All-American game. And he's really impressing people right now. But Brock, with his speed, is ridiculous. Talk about Kyle Parker being fast. Brock Boyd is faster than Kyle Parker. And he is now 6'1", up to 190. Legend Bay. Legend Bay is obviously a unique weapon. And we will see if they get into trying to use him at all this year. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but definitely worth putting up there. But as we look at this, when you look at the key losses, key losses versus the key gains and the key additions. I mean, your offense got better. I think it got better. I really do. I know a lot of people would like to see additional offensive linemen added, but that's a damn good job. And everybody got a year older and a year more developed. When we look at the defense, that's where there's the big changes. So to take a little snapshot of that in your mind, and here comes the defense. Boom. Hello. All right, key losses to the NFL. Caleb Downs, IGB, K-Max, Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, Caden Curry. And based on that and that alone, there is no way this defense in 26 is going to be as good as 25. Can't happen. Can't happen after you lose that. Add the portal guys to that: Fahim Delane, Aaron Scott, Bryce West, Jarquez Carter, guys of consequence who would have competed for starting roles, 2 deep roles this year. Caleb Downs, IGB, K-Mac, Sonny Styles, Arvell, Caden Curry. Portal, Fahim Delane, Aaron Scott, Bryce West, Jarquez Carter. Key retention. Did a really good job, man. They picked, the guys that are in there, heading into year 2 that they really wanted to keep. You can see who they made sure they kept. Obviously, the Kenyatta thing was a huge deal. They kept Kenyatta, kept Zion Grady, Will Smith, Eddie Houston, Riley Pettijohn. They absolutely wanted to make sure that he wasn't a 1 year and out. Same with Zion Grady. Peyton Pierce, TJ Alford, another guy after 1 year. They wanted to make sure he was not a one and done. Devin Sanchez, same thing. Then Jalen McClain, and there were some rumors about him in Tennessee where his brother plays, and Jermaine Matthews. So a lot of key retention, key portal additions. Up front, John Walker out of UCF, James Smith out of Alabama, Quay Russaw, that is a weapon. We call him he's a weapon, weaponized, like Kari Wilder. Christian Allegro, the linebacker, and then in the secondary, Earl Little, Terry Moore, and Cam Calhoun. And then key recruiting guys who could potentially, or in my opinion, will see the field this year a lot. Kari Wilder, that is the baddest SOB in the class. Jay Timmons, who might also be up there for the baddest SOB in the class. And Charles Power, who is Rivals' top tier guy, said that he thinks Jay Timmons is pound for pound the best football player in this class. Football player, best. And then Blaine Bradford. I mean, these are 3 bad young dudes. And I know there's this big thing going on, this big talking point that, you can take, I don't care what kind of 5-star you got, you put him against a 22-year-old 3-star who's now 22. That 22-year-old is going to win every time. Kari Wilder is going to embarrass the hell out of a lot of 22-year-olds because he's going to play this year and he's going to be a bad SOB. And when we look at BIA, you got Jermaine, you got Devin, you got Jordan, you got Jay Timmons, Cam Calhoun and Dominic Kelly, and then Jordan Woods. So here's your corners. How do you feel about that cornerback room? A lot of changes. You bring in the 2 freshmen and Jordan Thomas and Jay Timmons. You bring in Cam Calhoun and Dominic Kelly. I mean, that's 4 new guys in there, but you keep 2 guys who got some starts under their belt for you. You lose IGB. It's going to be interesting to see who is, how long can Cam Calhoun hold on to that number 3 spot? Can one of the freshmen, Jordan Thomas or Jay Timmons, beat him out? You also got Jordan Woods, who's more of a project guy who will take a little longer. But I love the 2 recruits. I really like Dominic Kelly. Cam Calhoun, I'm not 100% sold on, though he did have a really good season at Utah. Little sketchy, man. Little sketchy. A little nervous about it. When we talk about running back, you got Bo Jackson, you got Isaiah West, you got Jacoby Jackson. Obviously, you're hoping to get some more explosive runs. Jacoby Jackson had a 90-yard run in the spring game last year. He's got some juice, not super juiced. Will we see some legend? Will we see some turbo? Favor's got some jets. Favor didn't get to play much last year, but certainly you want to add some more explosion to the running back room. All in all, I really like the room. Very solid. And obviously, David Gabriel George, a premium on him for next year. When we look at the Rushmen, and we're going to go in depth on this one in tomorrow's Juck on Bucks episode. But when we look at the Rushmen, your assumed starting lineup, Kenyatta Jackson, Zion Grady opposite him, and then the rotation of James Smith, Edric Houston at 3 tech, John Walker, Will Smith at 1 tech. And this is going to be an area that really needs to be very stout for the Buckeyes with the schedule that they got. The schedule's hard as hell. And this is a lot of turnover, man. A lot of turnover. So, going to be very interesting to see what happens there. Again, we'll talk about that a little more in depth on tomorrow's Juck on Bucks, as we're going to go through every position room a little more in depth over the course of the next week and a half, because there's not going to be a ton to talk about. So we'll just kind of dissect each room and see what we think. How's it stack up versus last year? How's it stack up to what it might have looked like before the portal? But all in all, when we look at this portal class, I really love what they did. You know, you can always have more. Everybody always wants more. There can always be better. But you went and got yourself a whole lot of new starters with a lot more experience. And maybe if you went and got a couple of those bigger name guys, then you couldn't have got as many of those. So I think it just depends on how many of them you needed. And when it comes to defense, you might have added 5 new starters, potentially 6 new starters on defense. That is a pretty sweeping change. So all in all, everybody wanted an offensive lineman. I get it. When I look at this offensive line, I think that there is definitely, it wasn't the best coaching job we saw last year. That's for sure. And I probably overestimated what Tyler Bowen was going to be able to do in year 1 because of the system that they brought in with Marcus Johnson and Charlie Dickey. It was clear that they didn't do a good enough job, flat out. The last 2 games, same mistakes that we saw against Purdue, against Wisconsin. That's coaching. I also don't know if they had the guys in the right spots, and I hope we see them move that around a bit too. Here we go. Ethan says, I've seen way too many Legend Bay type of guys who don't do anything at OSU due to position management. He'll be in the portal in 2 years. It's absolutely fair to say, Ethan. It's absolutely fair to say. We've got a track record of guys like that not really being utilized properly and getting the most out of them. And the schools and the programs that I think get the most out of guys like that are the programs that need to rely on a guy like that. Like that's their guy, right? That's the dude. That's their most electric guy. We look at Oregon in the past with a couple of guys that they've had like that. We look at West Virginia with a couple of guys like that, Noel Devine, Steve Slayton. Like they needed a guy like that, and they designed ways to get him the ball. And if you don't do that with a guy like Legend Bay, then it just doesn't really happen because they don't fit the traditional role of either position. He doesn't fit a traditional back. He doesn't fit a traditional receiver. There you go. Cam Martinez, Jalen Marshall, et cetera. Exactly right. We've got a lot. Dontre Wilson. We got a lot of them. But are they committed to doing it this time? They certainly sold him on the fact that they are. I'll tell you that. What they said to him, really got him excited. So they wanted him. When we look at this last year's offense, it certainly wouldn't seem like it's the type of offense that wants to use a guy like that. Now you got a new offensive line or new offensive coordinator coming in, and who knows what he thinks. So is it very possible that he's in the portal in 2 years? Absolutely. Absolutely. So basically key retention, everyone who stayed. Got it. LOL. So, all right, we still got 3-0 with 9 minutes left in the second quarter. 3rd and 13, just across the 50 for the Hoosiers. Hoosiers. Mendoza overthrows it, going to go back to Miami, but a flag. And it is clear that they are putting a premium on putting big hits on Mendoza. No doubt about it. Dude's tough, man. I thought Caden Curry knocked him out after play number 1. 5-yard penalty will repeat 3rd down. I can't believe we're watching these two teams playing a national championship. It's just unreal. I'll tell you what, man, the new college football playoff, it's a whole lot of fun. It's a whole lot of fun. Tony Petitti, the absolute enemy of college football, trying to ruin it, trying to ruin everything, the regular season and the playoff. We'll talk about that soon. That guy is just an absolute villain. Wow. Big first down run for Indiana. Down to the 20. So anyway, friends, I appreciate you joining us tonight on Buckeye Huddle Primetime. We'll be back on Wednesday. We'll talk some more position groups. We'll talk how this game ends, amongst other things. And appreciate you joining us. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the Buckeye Huddle channel. And I will talk to you soon. Buckeye Huddle Primetime.